Chapter 9. Brynn spent her walk home focusing on any random detail around her. The leafless trees, the sting of salt in the air. Anything that kept out his smile, his golden brown eyes, his ghost touch spreading goosebumps along her skin. She made it to the apartment in what felt like both seconds and hours. Once she made it to the door, key between her fingers, she froze. Jaw twitching, she pulled in a rattling breath. Just smile like nothing's wrong. She swallowed hard, steeling herself, and inserted the key into the lock. The door clicked open, and she peeked around it, but the living area and kitchen were deserted. She blew out a sigh, and it took a little of the tension in her muscles with it as she hurried to her room. Once she got in, she collapsed back into the sheets and sighed. I have time to pull myself together. She stared at the ceiling. The swirls in the paint gave way to flashes of the past 24 hours. As those memories played out, something gnawed through her chest. A click broke through the silence. She shot up from the bed, staring at the door as it opened. Marietta? Her roommate stood in the doorway with an expression that looked just as shocked as Brynn felt. Brynn, she said, I thought you'd be back later. Yeah, she said, glancing away from her questioning gaze. I caught an early bus. Wait, Marietta said. Were you crying? Brynn's fingers flew to her eyes. When they came back wet, she dropped her head and turned away. It's nothing, Brynn said. Just allergies. Marietta didn't reply, and Brynn gulped down air instead of glancing at her roommate, terrified of what the other girl's face looked like. Brynn, she said, but her voice was kind. You don't have allergies. Brynn's head whipped around to find Marietta sitting on her bed. Her eyes filled with a look that terrified Brynn because it wasn't pity. No, Brynn said, I don't. I know you're really private about things, Marietta said, but I've never seen you cry before. Ever. Marietta's gaze slipped into a corner, but the concern in her eyes laced through her voice. I think what I'm trying to say is, I want to listen, if you want to tell me. She glanced up again, meeting Brynn's gaze. When they did, a small smile lifted a corner of her mouth. Well, Marietta said, turning to her bag and unzipping it. I'll just unpack and do some work out at the coffee table and... Etta, Brynn said, her eyes hot. Etta looked up, her own eyes wide when they reached Brynn's face. She crossed the room in a couple of strides and wrapped her arms around Brynn. It reminded her of the blanket her mother used to tuck her in with after a hard day. She leaned into it, and the tears exploded. Once Brynn shed all the tears, she told Etta everything. About feeling like an outsider at Thanksgiving. About Finn showing up and taking her away from it. About what happened between them after that. And Etta just listened. No wonder you were crying, Etta said. That's more than anyone could handle in the span of a day. Brynn's chest and head were hollow. With everything out, she felt light, almost weightless. Geez, girl, she continued. And there's a lot more behind all of it too, huh? I guess, Brynn said, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have bothered you with all of it. No, Etta said, grabbing Bryn's clasped hands. I'm glad you told me. I've wanted to talk to you like this for a long time. Thank you. Brynn stared at the other girl, stunned. Thank you, she said, her cheeks burning, for listening. Etta's face softened as she smiled back. But really, she said, I know this is totally beside the point, but I really can't believe that Finn Whitaker drove all the way out there off a single text. He must really care about you. Brynn swallowed, but her mouth was dry, so it felt like chafing sandpaper in her throat. I can see that he cares about me, she said, but I don't really understand. We're friends, but I didn't mind what happened. I did like it. Brynn sucked in a heady breath. I know you said before that he doesn't commit to anything, Brynn said, and I decided I'm okay with that. I just want to be able to keep talking to him. I don't care about anything else. In the following silence, Brynn glanced at Etta, only to find her lips pursed. I'm on your side, she said. So, whatever you want is what's right. But, I think you can ask for more. That's okay too. More? But the word wouldn't leave her chest. And Brynn, she said, her voice cracking a bit. I just want you to know that I think you're really cool and really, really brave. A tear slid down Etta's lightly freckled cheeks. Pressure squeezed behind Brynn's nose again, but she laughed, trying to push it all away. Thanks, Brynn said. Etta clasped Brynn's hand and smiled.
Finn. Finn sat in his apartment staring at the video game on his TV screen. His fingers worked across the controls, but his skin was hot, his whole body filled with flames. He shook his head, forcing his eyes to focus on the gritty city in the game. It only took another second for his thoughts to drift back to Brynn, her curly hair threaded through his fingers, her skin warming under his touch, the softness in her voice when she said, I feel close to you. The screen erupted with a shower of blood and a closing, mission failure. He grunted and blew out a weary sigh. Whatever, he said, tossing the controller onto the coffee table. Standing up, he glanced down the hallway. The memory of Brynn walking out that door only a few hours earlier superimposed over the empty space. His throat constricted as he swallowed. He walked around the room, scratching the back of his head. Ugh, he groaned. He moved with the speed of flashing strobe lights, grabbing his keys, sliding his shoes on, and heading out the door. Once he was outside, he tried emptying his head, but the longer he walked, the more intrusive the images of their night together. Finally, he succumbed, sitting on a bench that faced the beach. As he watched the waves crash, he pulled out his phone. If you ever do want to talk about it, you can talk to me too, you know. How long since she said that? Finn flipped through his texts before realizing he'd never texted Skylar outside a group chat. Starting a new message, his fingers swiped words. Once the message whooshed off, he couldn't remember what he wrote. Her message back was quick. He hadn't even put the phone back in his pocket. Reading her reply, and then his original message made the blood under his cheeks burn. What am I, a middle school kid? But he sent back his location anyway, and it wasn't too long before he heard a furious gate. When he looked up, he saw her, giving him her trademark exasperated look. Black Friday shopping bags creased into her arms. What? He asked with a little more bite than he intended. Finn, she sighed, you're so hopeless. Well, my bad for bothering you, she laughed. No, you're good. Skylar dropped the shopping bags on the end of the bench before sitting down herself. So, she spent the night, huh? Yeah, he said. But you didn't do anything? He swallowed hard, clamping down his jaw. Not anything, he said. But you didn't really hook up, she said. You actually just slept? Yeah. Together? Yeah, he said. She couldn't sleep at first, so we slept next to each other, he said. Why does this matter? Because, she said, don't you understand? Finn tore his gaze from the crashing waves and stared at Skylar. She sighed again. No, she said, I guess you don't. Otherwise, you wouldn't have messaged me. His teeth ground against each other. Finn, she said, you told me before that you didn't want to be with her like that. But last night, you kinda did do that. And did you? He stared at her. She stared back at him. Did I? You know, she said, her eyes growing wider. His brows pushed into his forehead, confused and mildly annoyed. Did you want to do more? Yes, he said, the word flying out of his mouth. But you didn't. Yeah. Would you want to, even now? Yeah, he said again. Would you still want to, even if she needed to keep stopping? Skylar asked. Like you'd want to keep being with her. Finn almost choked around the words stuck in his throat. Instead, he just nodded. Do I really need to tell you? Skylar said. No. Finn dropped his head to his hands, raking his fingers over his face. Is it really something you've never felt before? She asked. All those girls in high school, the past 4 years in uni? You've never? No, Finn said. Never. But that's not something I know how to do, he said. You know my family, Sky. Who says it has to look anything like that? What? Finn said, pulling his head out of his hands to stare at his best friend's girlfriend. Really, she said, cocking an eyebrow at him. Does Arden really not talk about any of that? Have you really not paid any attention? Sorry, he said. Whatever, she waved him off as she stared out at the angry tide. Dark clouds hovered over the shore, a ways off from where they were, but close enough to know the storm would reach them soon. My parents aren't the pinnacles of healthy attachment, she said. That's why I struggled a lot in high school. But that doesn't matter right now. It was Arden who showed me it could be different. We didn't have to be my parents. A peal of thunder clapped in the distance, echoing out to where they sat. You don't have to be your parents either. She glanced back at him and smiled. It reached right into her eyes. In her expression, he saw flashes of all the times he could never bear to look at Arden and her before. At the time, it hurt, watching them. Now it planted a small seed in his chest. We should go, Finn said. Arden would kill me if you got struck by lightning 'cause of me. She giggled, and her face softened, her gaze on the guardrails ahead. But her eyes were filled with so much affection that he knew she wasn't really seeing the railing. Yeah, she said, standing. Get home safe. Will do, he said, waving to her as he turned back for his apartment. Oh, Skylar called out. He turned over his shoulder. We're finally friends now, she said, with a huge grin before whirling back around. I'll have to thank Arden for finding her.
Brynn. Brynn stared at the map on her phone, looking at the address Finn sent her before glancing up. Is this the place? She stared at the fancy boardwalk restaurant, sweat beading in her palm. She said, her eyes darting around. You don't have to gawk. The voice came from behind her. Whirling around, she saw Finn walking up from the north side of the beach. His studio was in the opposite direction. Where was he coming from? An itch pulsed in her chest with the thought. Eyes lifting, he caught her gaze with his honey golden eyes. Hi, he said, his head tilting to one side once he was just a foot or two away. Hi, she said, glancing away as a slight tremor started in her fingers. This place, can't really afford it. His low chuckle drew her gaze back to him. Sorry, he said, covering his mouth with the back of his hand. I just sent you this address 'cause it was easier. So, she said, we're not eating here? No, he said, and grabbed her free hand. I thought this place would be better. What place? She asked as he dragged her along, his fingers clasped around hers. You'll see, he said, and she could just see the smirk on his profile when he glanced over his shoulder. It's not far. And it wasn't. It only took a minute or two before they were in line at a taco food truck. Tacos? Yeah, he said. Actually, it's my birthday today. Your birthday? Her mind flashed back to his license he'd shown her the first time at the bar, but the image of it in her memory was fuzzy. December 1st. Happy birthday, she said as the line moved ahead. But I didn't know. I don't have anything for you. His face broke into a grin. Don't worry about it, he said. Actually, I'm just glad I could show you this place. That's enough. That's not really anything. She swallowed hard as she waved away a couple of stray curls that escaped her bun. Your hair's not down today, he said. She glanced at him, but his eyes were on her hair. I was working at the library this morning, she said. It's easier to work when it's pulled up. The library, he said. Which one? Ason's. The law library? He asked. How'd you get stuck there? I don't feel stuck, she said. I like it there. But if you were at Erasmus, I'd have seen you more, he mumbled. She chuckled. He quirked a smile before making it to the counter. After ordering and getting the food, they found a picnic table nearby and settled in. So, Finn said around a mouthful of taco, when's your birthday? Mine, she said, setting hers down. November 6th. What? That was like 3 weeks ago. Yeah, she said. It was the day after we were at the dining hall the first time. Why didn't you say anything? Her cheeks burned, but she took a deep breath. I don't really like my birthday, she finally said. But her throat felt constricted. She dropped her gaze to the table. Because of your parents? Yeah. Well, he said, let's celebrate it. What? Yeah, next weekend. Come over and let's celebrate. A month later? Yeah, he said. Why not? Finals will be over. We can do whatever you want. Her chest tightened. Okay, she said, but she could barely breathe the word out. Once we finish here, he said, I wanted to take you somewhere. Is that cool? She peeked up at him after taking another bite. Yeah, she said, once she'd swallowed it down. Great. The rest of their meal passed in idle conversation about finals, studying, and their plans for the winter break. That kept up as Finn led her down the beach walk. They walked for a while, passing the busiest part before the waves started to creep closer and closer to the edge of the pavement. Then she realized where they were going. She could already see it. Finn? I thought you'd figure it out sooner, he said. She loved and hated this remote stretch of the beach walk. With the stone steps that led right into the water, it's where she always went to think. It's where she first really met Finn. "Come on," he said, and grabbed her hand again, pulling her along until they were at the exact spot where he first spoke to her. "Brynn," he said, his voice suddenly bittersweet, like melting syrup. Taking a step forward, his shoe nearly brushed hers. She glanced up at him. He really is tall. She struggled to swallow once she saw the intensity in his gaze. "I want to be with you." As he twined his fingers through hers, her chest rose and fell too quickly, and her jaw ached with tension. Watching every change in her expression, his brows furrowed. "Do you not want to?" His voice barely carried over the tide, crashing into concrete. "Is he hurt?" "No," she blurted out. "That's not it." "It's not?" he asked, but his lips quirked up at the corner a little. Her eyes narrowed. "Is he having fun with this?" "I don't know," she said, the pressure in her chest expanding and creeping up behind her eyes. She sank to the ground, burying her head into her knees. Finn gently tightened his grip around her hand. "I don't know," she said, the words coming out like the last bit of air squeaking out of a balloon. Laughter erupted through the noisy waves. "The hell?" She glanced up at him as his face lit up like a stadium. "What?" she said. "Well, first," he said, "you're so cute. You remind me of Skylar's cat." "A cat?" "What?" she said again. He knelt down, his knees hovering over the concrete. "But more importantly," he said, grinning like a goofy child, "this is exactly like how we met." She glanced around, the warmth from his hand anchoring her as she took it all in. "But now you're holding my hand," she said. His grin softened, and it felt like candlelight. "Yeah," he said, squeezing her hand again. "I am. And yet you don't want to be my girlfriend?" "No," she said. "That's not it." "Then what's going on, Brynn?" His smile faded, but his eyes were still bright. "You want to be in some weird, undefined thing?" he asked. "No," she said. I don't know what this means." Tilting his head, he reached out with his other hand, cupping his palm against her cheek. His fingers caught little strands of her hair. It sent tingles down her spine. What means?" "Being together," she said, and it came out like vomit. "Girlfriend? Boyfriend? Couple?" Her breath lodged in her throat. She was sure there was more, but she felt queasy. "Don't we get to decide what it means?" he said, brushing her cheekbone with his thumb. "What?" She peeked up at him. "Isn't that what we'd be doing together?" he said, smiling. The tension in her chest dissipated like salt crystals in boiling water. The nausea in her gut, the pressure in her eyes, it all vanished as if it never even existed in the first place. Right, he asked, smirking like a thief. "So, that's a yes?" "Yeah," she said. How can that smile get any wider? But she felt her lips tugging at the corners too. Okay, he said, and that was the only warning she had before he jolted upright, bringing her with him. Thrown off balance, she had nowhere to go except to crash into his chest. Pressed right up against him, she felt his body shake with laughter as he wrapped his arms around her. Hey, she protested, but even to her own ears, it held no weight when she felt this warm against the bitter seawater chill. He just tightened his hold until all at once he released her, only to take her face in his hands. You know, he said, we have each other now. Yeah, she said, confused. So, don't you feel lighter too? He said. About all that family stuff? A burning at the back of her throat threatened to well up to her eyes. But she'd never felt so warm in December. Yeah, she said. I like it better this way. Leaning forward, his lips pressed into her forehead. Yeah, he said, pulling back just enough to meet her eyes. Me too. The end.
Thank you for reading The Storm by the Shore.